Okay, and so in the last video I left you with a picture of the moon, and I just wanted you to gaze at it a little bit here. And you can see all these wonderful craters here that are on the moon. And we sort of were really mean to the moon, but it's something that's true, is that unfortunately the moon is geologically dead. In other words, these craters all sort of exist and have existed and likely will exist for a long time because there's no rain or wind or erosion or plate tectonics on the moon, and these sort of things here tend to shift and change the natural landforms. In this case here, they would definitely go into erasing some of these craters, but none of this exists on the moon. So for example, if this crater here was formed 250 million years ago, and I have no idea if it was or not, well, it's still going to be there because there's none of these processes here to get rid of it. And so yeah, just take a good look at the moon. With all these craters, it just was hammered in the early days of the solar system by these meteorites. So what I'd like to do then is I'd like to look at this section of the moon right here. You can see it's still the ears of the bunny right there. So it looks like we're looking at the bunny's head right there. Zoom in on that section. Okay. And here it is, the very northern edge of that section. And here's sort of what we'll zoom into. So this is some high-resolution picture taken by perhaps the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that I showed you about in a few past videos. And if you just gauge at this for a minute here, you can just see how smooth the maria are. Just very smooth. It doesn't look rocky or sandy. It just looks like smooth lava flow that hardened. Now, it's going to be very sandy now. I think there's a lot of dust all over the moon, but it just looks very, very smooth. And if you look at it, you can see a bunch of craters in there, and you can see just a bunch of little small ones in there all over the place. But everywhere you see one of these craters, that's where the moon was hit by something pretty catastrophic. I mean, some of these craters can be the size of, a city or something like that on Earth. And so the moon has had a very violent past, just bam, 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 getting hit all the time. So anyway, what we'll do, we'll continue to zoom, and we'll look down at this zoomed in part of this area. We're going to zoom in even more just inside this yellow portion right here. Okay, so the first thing is that if you want, there's a copy of this crater field on campus, and you should get it, because what I'd like to do is label these craters now so we can sort of refer to them and do our activity. So I don't know if you're pausing the video or you can just pause it and get it, but I'm just speaking slowly here. I'll just assume you have a copy of it about 3, 2, 1 now. Okay, so let's label some of the craters here. Turns out this top one here is called the Beketov crater. Okay, and this crater down here is called the Janssen crater. Now, please don't memorize these names. I'm not going to give you a crater field on any of the exams that you'll have to sort of know this. I'm just trying to set up our activity. This crater here is just called crater D. Sorry about that, doesn't have a name. This one here is called crater E. This one right here that you can barely see is called crater R. This one over here is called crater L. And this crater down here on that little one right there is called crater Y. Okay. So we have Beketov, Janssen, Y-E-L-R-N-D. Y-E-L-R-N-D. Looks like I got them all labeled. So that's sort of the craters that we'll deal with. And so what I'd like to do then is, well, there's sort of a more solid viewing of it there. So what I'd like to do then is do a little bit of geological sleuthing with you. And what I mean by that is it turns out that you can look at this crater field, and just by seeing some of the features that you see, you can actually pick out a timeline for when some of these craters formed, say, versus when the lava flowed and that sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting, and that's what I mean by geological sleuthing. So we're just taking a raw picture of the moon with a crater field here and seeing if we can apply some logic and some reasoning to figure out when some of these things happened relative to other ones. So I will do the sleuthing in the very next video.